There is an idea that kindness, unrestrained and unlimited, is the ultimate virtue. We have heard it so many times that it has become a near unquestionable axiom: be kind, for kindness is its own reward. And in a sense, we know this to be true. Kindness, in its purest form, is the ability to respond to the weaknesses, the fears, and the imperfections of others with an open heart and a generous spirit. But if we were to pause and examine this notion more closely, we may begin to see a different picture, one that tells us a deeper truth. Kindness, when it is practiced without care, can be dangerous. We live in a world where we are constantly told that kindness is the ultimate virtue. The great power of kindness is celebrated in every corner of society, from our homes to the halls of government. Be kind, we hear, for kindness is a reflection of your character. But what if I were to tell you that there is a danger in being too kind? What if the very thing we believe to be our greatest strength could, when practiced indiscriminately, become our greatest weakness? The danger of being too kind lies not in the act of kindness itself, but in the lack of discernment with which we offer it. It is possible, in our eagerness to be kind, to overlook the deeper consequences of our actions. Sometimes kindness can become a mask that hides the truth we need to see, a crutch that prevents growth, a path that enables rather than challenges. Kindness in words creates confidence, said Lao Tzu, but kindness in thinking creates profoundness. There is power in kindness, but this power must be tempered with wisdom and awareness. Too often, kindness is offered without pause, without question, and without regard for its long-term impact. The truth is, we are not doing others any favors when we make it easy for them to remain in their flaws, to perpetuate their weaknesses, to avoid the hard work that life demands. I have seen parents, teachers, friends, all acting out of the best intentions, but offering kindness that often enables the very things they wish to change. We often believe that if we shield others from the consequences of their actions, we are being kind, but in reality, we may be perpetuating their failures. As the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates said, strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. Too much kindness, when given recklessly, can entrench others in a cycle of dependency, shielding them from the hard truths they need to hear. This is where discernment becomes crucial. A truly kind person does not simply give and give without thought. No, they understand the value of balance. They understand that sometimes the most loving thing they can do is not to offer comfort, but to demand change. Kindness, when unmeasured, can become a force that erodes both the giver and the receiver. It is not enough to be kind, one must be wise in how that kindness is expressed. As C.S. Lewis put it, love is not affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good, as far as it can be obtained to love, is to desire growth, not stagnation. We must also recognize that kindness without boundaries is dangerous, not just for others, but for ourselves. We are often so eager to serve, to please, and to care for others that we forget to care for ourselves. You cannot pour from an empty cup, the saying goes, and it is a simple but profound truth. Kindness, when offered indiscriminately, can drain us of our own vitality, leaving us exhausted, resentful, and burned out. The danger of overextending ourselves for others is not just that we may end up with nothing left to give, it is that, by giving without regard for our own needs, we teach others that they too can take without offering anything in return. This, in turn, can breed an unhealthy dependence that stifles both parties' growth. But true kindness is not weakness, it is strength. Kindness with boundaries is the mark of someone who understands both their own limits and the needs of others, is someone who knows that they must first tend to their own well-being in order to be of service to the world. The Dalai Lama once said, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion, but this is not the same as endlessly sacrificing for others. It is not the same as saying yes when you should say no. True compassion recognizes when it is time to step back, to preserve one's energy, and to allow others to face the challenges of life on their own. It is through struggle that we grow, and to deny someone that opportunity through excessive kindness is, in fact, to deny them the chance to develop the strength they need. Perhaps the greatest danger of excessive kindness is that it can lead us to mistake it for weakness. We believe that kindness requires us to always be gentle, to always be accommodating, to always be agreeable. But the truth is that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone is to challenge them, to push them to be better, to speak hard truths that they may not want to hear. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. In the same way, when we avoid the necessary conflict of life, when we coddle others with kindness in order to avoid confrontation, we risk becoming enablers of complacency and stagnation. True kindness sometimes requires toughness, requires us to speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. This is the paradox of kindness. It is both soft and strong. It is both compassionate and challenging. Kindness, when practiced correctly, can break the cycle of pain and hardship, but it must be willing to confront the truth. When we act out of kindness, we must not just ask, how can I help, but how can I help them grow? This is the essence of the tough love that we often hear about but rarely understand. It is the recognition that sometimes kindness is not about offering comfort, but about offering the courage to face hard truths, the courage to face the consequences of one's actions, and the courage to step into the unknown. To be truly kind is not to be weak. It is to be strong enough to love others even when it means letting them go, strong enough to tell them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. It is to know that, as Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. Kindness is not the absence of tough love, it is the presence of it. It is the willingness to do what is necessary, not what is easy for the sake of another's growth and well-being. So the danger of being too kind is not that kindness itself is bad, it is that, when kindness is given without boundaries, without wisdom, and without a sense of justice, it can prevent both the giver and the receiver from growing. It can create an environment of dependency rather than empowerment. It can shield others from the lessons they need to learn, and in doing so, it can stunt their development. True kindness requires discernment. It requires the strength to say no when necessary, the courage to challenge when needed, and the wisdom to know when to let others face their struggles. Only then can kindness fulfill its highest purpose to transform, to elevate, and to help others become the best versions of themselves. And in this we find not just kindness, but true love. In our fast-paced world, we often hear the call to be kind, to offer a helping hand, to act with compassion. Kindness is celebrated as one of the highest virtues. But there is a crucial truth that we must not overlook kindness, while powerful, must be tempered with discernment. It is not enough to simply act kindly, we must act wisely. As the great philosopher Aristotle once said, the life of money-making is one undertaken under compulsion, and wealth is evidently not the good we are seeking for it, is merely useful, and for the sake of something else. In the same way, kindness must never be a mere gesture. It must serve a purpose, often the greater purpose of nurturing growth, not enabling stagnation. Sometimes kindness without discernment can lead us down a path where we unintentionally hinder the very people we wish to help. We may become so eager to ease someone's pain, to comfort their struggles, that we shield them from the very lessons they need to learn. As Lao Tzu wisely said, kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love, but giving without thought or boundary is not always kind. It is, at times, a form of avoidance. It is an act that seeks to alleviate our own discomfort with another's hardship, rather than addressing the greater good. The act of kindness becomes an escape, a way to avoid the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is not to offer solace, but to challenge, to confront, to ask difficult questions. True kindness requires wisdom. It requires knowing when to give and when to hold back, when to offer comfort and when to allow space for growth. The highest form of love, the poet Khalil Gibran writes, is not to give what you think you want, but to give what you know you need. Kindness must come from a place of understanding not just of the other person's immediate desires, but of their long-term needs. This is not always easy, but it is the kind of kindness that empowers rather than enables. It's the kind of kindness that challenges others to rise to their fullest potential, even if it means stepping out of our comfort zone. Kindness without discernment can also leave us vulnerable. If we give too much without considering our own limits, we risk depleting ourselves and becoming resentful. As the Dalai Lama reminds us, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. But what he doesn't say is that compassion must be balanced. We must first tend to our own needs before we can truly serve others. It is not selfish to set boundaries, it is wise. It is not weakness to protect our own well-being, it is strength. Without this self-awareness, we risk losing our ability to give meaningfully. You cannot pour from an empty cup, the saying goes, and it is a truth that we must carry with us every day. In the end, kindness without discernment can only lead to frustration, burnout, and unfulfilled potential. True kindness is not about endless sacrifice, it is about giving what is needed, when it is needed, and with the wisdom to know the difference. It is not about making things easier for others, it is about helping them grow, even when that means allowing them to face hardship. As the poet Rumi wrote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in new form." The kindness we offer should aim not to preserve the comfort of others, but to help them evolve into the best version of themselves. So let us be kind, but let us also be wise. Let us offer the right kind of love, the kind that challenges, that empowers, that lifts others up to meet their own greatness. Let us not fall into the trap of kindness without purpose, but instead embrace the true, transformative power of discernment in our compassion. Because, as the great Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And this is the highest form of kindness we can offer. In life, we often hear about the importance of kindness. We are told that kindness is one of the greatest virtues, a force that can heal wounds, bridge divides, and soften the hardest of hearts. But there is another truth, that we must face kindness, when practiced without boundaries, can create weakness. While kindness is a beautiful thing, it must be anchored in strength. True kindness comes not from a place of endless giving, but from a place of self-awareness and self-respect. Without boundaries, kindness can become a crutch, both for the giver and the receiver, and the power of true kindness will be lost. We live in a world that often teaches us to be nice rather than strong. We are told that to be kind is to be generous in spirit, to give without measure, and to sacrifice our own well-being for the sake of others. Yet, as much as we may wish to help others, we must remember the ancient wisdom found in the words of the Buddha, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Kindness that neglects the self cannot truly help others. If we constantly give without regard for our own needs and boundaries, we may find ourselves empty, exhausted, and incapable of sustaining the very kindness we wish to offer. There is a great risk in being too kind without recognizing the importance of self-preservation. It is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the more we give, the more virtuous we become. But to be constantly available, to be endlessly accommodating without ever taking a step back to refuel, is not kindness, it is depletion. As the famous quote by author and speaker Jim Rohn goes, "You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight." This change in direction must start with an understanding that true kindness requires strength, both in boundaries and in self-awareness. Boundaries are not walls, but rather the framework within which kindness can thrive. Without them, kindness becomes a tool of weakness rather than a force for positive change. Boundaries protect our energy, our time, and our mental well-being. The famous author Maya Angelou once said, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated." In order to avoid the trap of being worn down by our own acts of kindness, we must learn to set limits, to understand that there is a time to give and a time for setting boundaries. Step back. By setting boundaries, we ensure that the kindness we offer is genuine and not born out of obligation or fear of rejection. Without boundaries, we risk becoming martyrs to our own good intentions, sacrificing ourselves for the sake of others to our own detriment. This is not the type of kindness that leads to lasting fulfillment or positive change. One of the dangers of being too kind is that we may inadvertently encourage dependence in others. When we consistently put the needs of others before our own, we run the risk of enabling behaviors that prevent others from growing and learning. True kindness requires us to know when to step back, to allow others to face the consequences of their actions, and to let them rise to their own potential. As the motivational speaker and author Tony Robbins wisely said, "The only limit to your impact is your imagination and commitment." When we offer too much, we may unintentionally limit others' potential by preventing them from stepping up and taking responsibility for their own lives. It is not kindness to take on the burdens of others at the expense of our own peace. It is an invitation for them to remain stagnant in their growth. The balance of kindness and strength is especially important in leadership. In our desire to help those we lead, whether in our families, workplaces, or communities, it is easy to think that kindness means offering unconditional support at all times. But real leadership, the kind that produces lasting impact, is not about being nice all the time. As the late John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach, once said, The true test of a man's character is what he does when no one is watching. True leadership requires strength, wisdom, and the courage to make difficult decisions, even when they are unpopular. Leaders who are overly kind without understanding the power of boundaries risk creating environments of complacency rather than growth. By setting clear expectations and standing firm in our values, we empower others to step up, take responsibility, and ultimately become stronger versions of themselves. Boundaries also protect us from the negative energy that can come from being overly accommodating. It is easy to fall into the trap of trying to please everyone, but the reality is that we cannot make everyone happy, nor should we try. In the words of the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. When we act from a place of genuine kindness, grounded in our values and purpose, we no longer need the approval of others. Our kindness is not dependent on external validation. It is rooted in a deep understanding of what it means to give without losing ourselves. This strength allows us to maintain a sense of balance and perspective, even when the demands of others are great. Another essential aspect of kindness and boundaries is the recognition that sometimes the kindest act we can offer is to say no. As the writer Anne Lamott wisely observed, no is a complete sentence. It can be incredibly difficult to say no, especially when we fear disappointing others or letting them down. But by refusing to set boundaries, we allow others to overstep and demand more than is reasonable, ultimately diminishing our ability to offer genuine kindness. Saying no is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-respect and preservation. By saying no when we need to, we ensure that our kindness is always available when it is truly needed, rather than spread thin by constant demands. True kindness is not about being endlessly available or constantly sacrificing ourselves for others. It is about knowing when to give and when to protect our energy. It is about recognizing that boundaries are not walls, but safeguards that allow kindness to flourish. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "You must change your life, and this change begins with recognizing that our kindness must come from a place of strength, not weakness." We must cultivate the courage to set boundaries, to protect our energy, and to offer kindness that empowers others rather than enables them. The danger of being too kind lies in the risk of losing ourselves, of giving so much that we have nothing left to give. True kindness requires discernment, strength, and wisdom. By setting boundaries, we not only protect ourselves, but also provide the space for others to grow and become stronger. Kindness, when practiced with strength, is the most powerful force in the world, capable of transforming lives, inspiring greatness, and building resilience. Let us not be afraid to set boundaries, for in doing so, we create the conditions for the truest form of kindness to flow. There is a belief deeply ingrained in our culture that kindness means endless sacrifice. We are taught that to love someone truly is to give without limit, to put others' needs ahead of our own, no matter the cost. But what if I told you that this idea, while well-meaning, can be harmful not just to ourselves, but to the very people we seek to help? The belief that we must constantly sacrifice for others can lead to a place of resentment, burnout, and unspoken bitterness. The truth is, the greatest kindness we can show is not always in giving more, but in recognizing when it is time to stop and allow others to stand on their own. As the wise poet Khalil Gibran once wrote, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." The misconception that kindness is synonymous with self-sacrifice often leads us down a path of depletion. We give and give, believing that this is the way to show love, and yet, the more we sacrifice, the less we have to give. It is in this place of empty giving that we lose sight of the true power of kindness. As the great Maya Angelou said, "You cannot pour from an empty cup." True kindness is not about giving everything we have until we are drained. It is about giving from a place of abundance, from a source that is continually replenished. When we neglect ourselves in the name of kindness, we not only sacrifice our own well-being, but we also risk becoming less able to help others in the future. The idea of endless sacrifice can also lead to resentment. Over time, when we continually give without regard for our own needs, we begin to feel unappreciated, unnoticed, and even taken advantage of. As Anne Lamott so poignantly put it, no is a complete sentence. By learning to say no, by learning to recognize when enough is enough, we protect not just ourselves, but the integrity of our kindness. Saying no is not selfish, it is an act of self-preservation, a recognition that we must first be whole to be truly helpful to others. Moreover, the belief that we must always sacrifice can prevent others from learning important life lessons. If we are constantly giving, constantly protecting, and constantly rescuing, we prevent others from facing the natural consequences of their actions. In doing so, we unintentionally rob them of the opportunity to grow. True kindness requires us to let go, to trust that others are capable of standing on their own 2 feet, and to allow them to face challenges that will help them grow stronger. As author and speaker Jim Rohn wisely said, "Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better sometimes. The greatest gift we can give someone is the chance to become better through their own struggles." The false belief in endless sacrifice also blinds us to the deeper purpose of kindness. Kindness is not meant to drain us. It is meant to uplift both the giver and the receiver. The Dalai Lama once said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion, but compassion requires balance. It requires us to practice kindness while also maintaining healthy boundaries. When we learn to give what we can, while also preserving our own energy and well-being, we can sustain the power of kindness for the long haul without becoming martyrs to our own good intentions." True kindness is not about giving everything until we have nothing left. It is about understanding when to give, when to protect, and when to let go. It is about creating a space where we can offer help, but also teach others to help themselves. As Gandhi so famously said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." But losing ourselves doesn't mean sacrificing our well-being. It means giving in a way that nourishes both ourselves and others. Let us remember that the greatest act of kindness we can offer is not the endless sacrifice of ourselves, but the wisdom to know when to give, when to step back, and when to allow others the space to rise to their own greatness.